There's a contract you've never signed. You move, it moves. You stop, it stops. Your hand goes up, the dark shape on the wall goes up with it. No negotiation, no delay, no exceptions. It's the most reliable relationship you've ever had. You've trusted it since before you could walk. Toddlers notice their shadows and laugh. Children chase them on summer pavements and stomp on them and feel clever for escaping. Adults stop noticing them entirely. That's how it wants it. I'm going to ask you to do something right now. Don't look at the camera. Look at your shadow. Wherever you are sitting, however you are watching this, find the shadow your body is casting right now. Look at it. It's just a shape, right? It's the absence of light where your body blocks it. No mass, no depth. Physically incapable of independent motion. You learned this in middle school. You know this is true. So, explain to me, because I have spent the past 3 weeks trying to explain it to myself why mine moved before I did. Not after, not at the same time, before. And once I noticed it, once the pattern was visible, I started to understand that what I was looking at had never been a shadow at all. It started on a Tuesday, which feels important somehow. Nothing interesting ever starts on a Tuesday. I'd been working late, the kind of late where the whole neighborhood goes quiet, and the only sound you're aware of is the refrigerator humming 2 rooms away, and the occasional car passing outside that makes you irrationally grateful that other people still exist. I went to the bathroom to wash my face. The fluorescent tube in there takes a second to flicker on cheap fixture. 5 years old. I'd been meaning to replace it since before I could remember. The light comes up in stages. Flicker, pause, then steady. I ran cold water, leaned over the sink, pulled my hands back toward the towel. And in my peripheral vision, because it's always the peripheral vision, isn't it? The part of your sight that your brain edits, least I saw the shadow of my arms on the shower curtain. They didn't drop when my arms dropped. I want to be exact about this, because I've replayed it hundreds of times. It wasn't a long delay. It wasn't a full second. It was approximately 1 frame of video, a 1/16th of a second, maybe less. The kind of duration that your brain normally smooths over, the way it smooths over the gap between your heartbeats so you don't experience existence as a series of silences. But it didn't smooth it over. The shadow held its position for 1 frame after my arms had moved, and then, like a loading screen, finishing it caught up. If you work in technology, you know the word latency. It's the delay between an input and its effect. When you type a letter, there's a gap, microscopic, almost always imperceptible, before it appears on screen. The data has to travel. The system has to process. No matter how fast your hardware, the delay exists. Light does not have latency. Light travels at 186,000 miles per second. A shadow is not a transmission. It is not a signal moving through a medium. It is the instantaneous absence of photons in a space occupied by a solid object. There is no processing. There is no travel time. There is no gap between the object and the shape it casts. The physics is not ambiguous on this point. A shadow cannot lag. I raised my hand. The shadow matched it perfectly. I turned off the light. I went to bed. I did what people do when they see something the world has no category for. I decided I was tired. That was the first time I let my brain lie to me to keep me comfortable. It would not be the last. But here's what stayed with me, even as I was falling asleep, even as I was actively choosing not to think about it. A glitch is not the same as an error. An error means something went wrong. A glitch means something is running correctly and you just saw behind the curtain. Three days later, I went for a run. Not because I'm a runner, I'm not, particularly, but because I needed to think, and thinking while sitting still wasn't working. I took the usual route. The suburbs at 11 p.m. are a specific kind of quiet that feels less like peace and more like everything holding its breath. If you've ever walked under street lamps at night, you know the rhythm. You enter the light, your shadow appears behind you and stretches long. You approach the pole, it shortens, disappears beneath your feet. You pass it, and it reappears ahead of you, stretching forward. It's one of those pieces of the world that's always there, and that you never think about. I was about half a mile out when I passed the lamp near the corner. The shadow stretched ahead of me. I noticed it, the way you notice something without deciding to the way your eye catches movement in your peripheral field before your conscious mind has processed what the movement was. The shadow wasn't matching my pace. I should be careful about how I say this. It wasn't dramatically lagging. It wasn't a movie effect where the shadow moves slowly in slow motion while the person moves normally. That would have been almost easier to deal with. Too impossible to be real, the brain files it as an optical illusion. You move on. This was subtle, a fraction of a second behind my stride. The way a drummer who is very, very slightly off tempo sounds wrong before you can identify why it sounds wrong. I slowed down. The shadow slowed down, then slowed down. I stopped completely, planted both feet, dead stop. The shadow took one full stride forward, and then snapped back to position beneath my feet. I didn't run. I want to be honest about that, not because I'm brave, but because I was so far into my analytical brain that the panic hadn't found the door yet. I was still in scientist mode, still gathering data. I stood under that lamp for probably 4 minutes, running tests. I moved my left arm. The shadow moved its left arm, then its left arm. Half a beat behind, consistent. I moved my right arm. Same result. I tilted my head. The shadow tilted and held the previous position for just a moment too long, like a video call buffering. Then I tried something different. I made no movement. I stood completely still. And in my head, only in my head, no muscle activation, no twitching. I planned to raise my right arm. I thought about it, prepared for it, built the intention in my mind. And then, at the absolute last fraction of a second, I switched. I raised my left arm instead. The shadow raised its right arm, the arm I had planned to raise, the arm I had decided, in the privacy of my own skull, before a single motor neuron had fired that I was going to raise. It had read my intention. not my movement, my intention. And it had been a half beat slow, so when I changed my mind at the last possible moment, it didn't have time to update the rendering. It made a mistake. And that mistake told me something I have spent 3 weeks trying to decide whether I wanted to know. It wasn't lagging because it was slow. It was lagging because after 30 years, it was getting tired of pretending to follow. I went home. I turned on every light in the house, not out of fear exactly, more out of the same instinct that makes scientists want more data points, multiple light sources, multiple shadows, a controlled environment. I stood in the center of the living room and thought through what I knew. If the shadow is lagging, it is processing. If it is processing, there is a system. If there is a system, there are rules. And if there are rules, there are edges, places where the rules break down and the system reveals itself. I needed to find the edges. The first test, stillness. I stood completely still for 10 minutes, not fidgeting, not shifting weight, genuinely still, the way you'd try to be in a game of statues. The shadows didn't move. Of course they didn't. A system maintaining an illusion only has to do work when the thing it's imitating is doing something. When you're still, the imitation is easy. Stillness requires no effort to copy. The second test, complexity. I started making compound movements, not just raising an arm while turning my head, while shifting my weight to one side. Multiple inputs simultaneously. And the lag increased. Slightly, not dramatically, but measurably, in the way you can measure something that your body understands before your conscious mind can put numbers on it. More complexity, more processing time, more of a delay. It was here in this fairly quiet, well-lit living room, running what amounted to a perceptual science experiment on my own shadow, that the nature of what I was dealing with changed. Up to this point, I had been treating this as a phenomenon, something happening to me, like a weather event or a power outage. Anomalous, disturbing, but ultimately external. What I was starting to understand was that this wasn't external. When you're running a video game, a visual effect, a simulation, the hardware has to calculate what the image should look like and then display it. The more complex the image, the more processing power required, the longer the calculation takes. High-end hardware renders fast enough that you never notice. Old hardware, degraded hardware, starts dropping frames. I have been alive for 31 years. In those 31 years, my shadow has matched every movement I have made. Every step, every gesture, every time I've turned a corner, reached for something, scratched my face, walked across a parking lot in winter. We are talking about billions of individual movements. All of them faithfully reproduced, all of them synchronized. That is an extraordinary amount of computational work for a system that is, apparently, beginning to show its age. And then, because I am apparently the kind of person who follows a thought all the way to the place where it stops being comfortable, I asked the next question. If the shadow is doing the computational work of imitating me, what is it getting out of the arrangement? A system doesn't run for 30 years out of habit. A system runs because it serves a purpose, because something requires it to run, because if the shadow stopped pretending to be a shadow, something would change. Something would be revealed. I want you to think about how a shadow actually works. Not the intuitive understanding object blocks light. Shape appears. The actual physics. A shadow is not a thing. It is the absence of a thing. It has no mass, no dimension, no depth. You cannot touch a shadow. You cannot hold it. It is simply the region where photons are not the dark space, defined entirely by what surrounds it, not by any property it possesses itself. In philosophy, there's a concept called a privation, the absence of something that should be present. Cold is the privation of heat. Darkness is the privation of light. A shadow is the privation of illumination. Now, turn that around. What if we've had the causality backwards? What if the shadow is not defined by the object in front of it, but the object is defined by the shadow behind it? Bear with me. I know how this sounds. I am aware of exactly how this sounds. I have a physics degree. I own the textbooks. I know what the equations say. But here is the thing about equations. They describe relationships. They describe correlations between things that happen simultaneously. And correlation does not tell you which direction the causality is flowing. Every time you've walked under a street lamp, you've assumed that you created the shadow, that your body blocked the light and produced the shape on the ground as a consequence. But what if the shape on the ground is the original and your body is just the scaffolding built around it to make it legible? What if what we call a human being is just the architecture that a shadow requires to exist in a world made of light? You have flesh and bone and weight because something weightless needed a way to move through the world without being noticed. You have a face because a shape without features can't pass as a person. You have 31 years of memories and preferences and relationships because a convincing anchor point for an entity that lives on flat surfaces in 2 dimensions requires that level of detail. We think we lead, it follows. But the marionette doesn't lead the strings. The strings lead, and the figure dances. The dance the strings require. And the lag I'm seeing, the dropped frames, the moments where the synchronization breaks, those aren't the shadow failing to keep up with me. Those are the moments where it stops bothering, where the strings go briefly slack, where it forgets, for one frame, to maintain the performance. And right now, I am sitting in a room with a single candle. I have been sitting perfectly still for approximately 40 minutes. My hands are flat on my knees. I haven't moved. I have barely breathed. And on the wall behind me, and I am telling you this as calmly as I am capable of, the shadow's fingers have been slowly, rhythmically tapping against its legs for the past 6 minutes. It isn't waiting for me to move first anymore. And I think that might be the most important thing I have ever told anyone. Here is what I think is actually happening. not what I want to be happening, not the story I'd tell myself to sleep tonight if I still slept normally. What I think, given the evidence I have collected over 3 weeks, is genuinely, mechanically occurring. The shadow is a rendering. It always has been. Not a projection of my body, a simulation of one, running on a system that has been active for as long as I have existed, possibly longer, designed to produce a convincing imitation of what a shadow should look like, what my shadow, specifically, should look like, given my body's movements, the angle of the light, the surface beneath me. It has been running this simulation continuously, without pause, for 31 years. And like any system running continuously for 31 years, it has begun to degrade. Not dramatically, not catastrophically, just incrementally, in the way that everything degrades. The margins getting slightly less precise. The synchronization slightly less tight. The frame rate dropping on complex inputs. Dropping frames, one at a time, occasionally, enough that someone paying close attention, which, as it turns out, I am, begins to notice the seams. The question that I cannot answer, that I have been circling for 3 weeks without finding a way in, is why. Why does the shadow need to be maintained? If this is a simulation, what happens when it stops running? Does the shadow become something else, something it was before the rendering started, something it's been underneath this whole time? Or does the object casting the shadow, does the scaffolding, the architecture, the convincing human-shaped anchor point, does that stop being necessary? I don't know. I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to understand that I am not being dramatic, and I am not performing for the camera, and I thought very hard about whether to include this part. 3 nights ago, I looked at my shadow on the bedroom wall. I was standing completely still. My shadow was standing completely still. But my shadow was standing slightly differently than I was standing. Not dramatically. The average person would not notice. But the weight distribution was wrong. The angle of the shoulders was wrong. The way the head was positioned relative to the neck. It was not copying my posture. It was standing the way it wanted to stand. And I had the overwhelming, irrational, completely visceral sense, the kind of certainty that bypasses the analytical brain entirely and lands somewhere older and less arguable, that it had been standing that way for a long time, that it always stood that way when I wasn't watching, and that it had simply forgotten that night to change back before I looked. Before you close this video, before you put the phone down or close the laptop and go about the rest of your evening, I want to give you a test, a real one, not to scare you. I'm past the point of trying to scare people with this. I'm at the point of wanting to know whether I'm alone in it. Find a light source, a lamp, a phone torch, it doesn't matter. Shine it at your torso from about a foot away. Turn so that the shadow it casts falls on a flat wall or a floor behind you. Now wave. Just once. Natural speed. Not too slow, not too fast. If the shadow waves with you simultaneously, cleanly, no hesitation, then you're fine. The system is running well. The rendering is keeping up. You have nothing to think about. Go to sleep. But if in the moment between your hand moving and the shadow moving there is something, a catch, a stiffness, a feeling that the shape on the wall was expecting a different movement and adjusted, don't react. Don't look alarmed. Don't stare at it too long. Because here's what 3 weeks of close observation has taught me. It knows when you know. And the lag, the slip, the dropped frames, those only happen when it thinks you're not paying close enough attention to notice. The moment you start watching for it, really watching it, tightens up, gets precise again, snaps back into perfect synchronization like it was never anything else. Which means it can do it correctly. It's just choosing not to. Tonight, I'm going to sleep in the dark. No candle, no lamp, no light source for it to work with. I figure that's the safest option. No light, no shadow, no rendering running in the corner of the room with its own agenda and 30 years of patience and a posture that isn't mine. But before the lights go off, I'm going to look at the wall one more time. And if the shadow looks back before I turn, well, that probably tells me everything I need to know about which one of us has been the anchor point this whole time.